Okay, hello everybody. So here we do economics and the environment, right? So that discussion of wealth, trade, leads into one more of those kind of examples, right? Here we get to talk about the tragedy of the commons, kind of following up from an earlier discussion we had. All right. So here's the situation. So you are this villager in particular, not any of the others, right? And you live in a small rural village with a fish pond, right? Everybody in the village relies on the fish for food, right? So instead of, coconuts and fish, we're just going to talk about fish for now because that makes it simpler, right? And you share that exact same fish pond with 3 other villagers, right? So there's 4 of you in total. Awesome. Now, keep in mind, you are, somebody who wants as many fish as possible, right? And so does each of the other villagers, right? I mean, we're just going to say here that, yeah, people need food, water, shelter, light, blah, blah, blah. People want to seek out more wealth for themselves. We're just going to take that as a given and re-examine that later on, right? But, maybe let's just imagine that these are all the most selfish, greedy pigs on Earth, and so are you, for the sake of this discussion only. Okay. Each pair of fish in the pond reproduces overnight, right? So if you have 6, right, that means that there are 3 pairs of fish, right? And they're going to pair up and make 3 new fish overnight, and then you get 9 in the morning, right? And we're just going to ignore, sex ratio and the time that it takes for fish to become full grown. We're just going to throw all that out the window, right? So if there were 6, then, that's going to make 3 pairs. There's going to be 9 total fish in the morning, right? Now the pond starts with 12 fish and can only have a maximum of 12 in it, right? So, okay, this scenario, right? There's 6, and then that's, 3 pairs, right? They pair up, and they make new fish overnight. You get 9, right? And then inside that 9, there's going to be 4 pairs, right, which pair up, and one of them is the odd person out, right? And then it becomes 12 fish in the morning, because 12 is like the maximum capacity of it, right? Never going to be more than that. So each villager, right, is, selfish, right, is greedy, wants to maximize how much they get, right? But we also have this problem where the fish reproduce in accordance with how many fish there are, right? So how many fish should, which is kind of a bad word, right? But should each villager catch each day, right? I'll put a pause point here. So the answer is 1, right? Each one of them takes out 1 fish. Okay, so it starts off with 12, right? Each one of them pulls out 1 fish, right? And takes it home and eats it, right? And there's 8 fish left in the pond overnight, right? And then of those 8, they're going to pair up, right? And that makes 4 pairs, 4 fish couples in total, which is going to produce 4 new fish overnight, which fills the pond back up to 12, right? So each one of them should catch 1 fish per day, right? But you can see why this word is like problematic, right? Like should, okay. What does it even mean, right? Like, what if they don't, right? Yeah, this is just going through the math here, right? Sure, so that's what should happen, but if each one of them is selfish, right, is greedy, and wants the biggest share for themselves, as is the case, right, then one of them is just going to go in and catch as many fish as they can, right, for themselves, right? And this one is going to catch as many fish as they can catch, right? Each person catches 3 fish for themselves, and then the pond is empty, and then they all starve to death. The end. Okay, well, human beings are still around, right? We didn't do this. We're still here, right? So let's set this aside, right? This is the bad outcome that you don't want. This is, wealth being destroyed, right? We have this wealth creating thing that is the fish in the pond who, make new fish even without the people going in and intervening, right? They don't have to, feed the fish. They don't have to do whatever, right? All they have to do is not mess with it, right? Is not destroy it, and the pond will create wealth. But because each one of them has a personal interest in catching more fish for themselves, they ruin it, right? They destroy the resource. So this is a collective action problem, right? And whenever they starve, their personal amount of wealth goes to negative infinity, right? Because they lose everything, right? This is a bad outcome, bad for all of them. This is a collective action problem, right? We have this conflict between the individual interests of the villagers and the collective interest, right? And they all have an opportunity to enrich themselves while spreading out the costs and the damages to everybody, right? Now, if that sounds familiar, right, we've heard of this before, right? We've been talking about cases of this all year. This is what sustainability in economic terms, in wealth terms, really means, right? Pollution, right, is an example of a collective action problem, right? We have our, factory, right, which is generating a whole bunch of waste as a byproduct, but they just dump it out into the river, and the factory takes home the profits of everything they're doing and the benefits, while everybody else pays the costs, right? This is totally analogous to what is happening here with the pond, all right? We have this conflict between the individual interests of these people who, are acting selfishly as we should expect, and the interests of everybody, right? And it ends up destroying wealth and creating a bad outcome as a result, unless, right, we have some sort of collective action solution, right? So we will do this really useful thing, right? We will imagine a different ending, a different outcome to the same story, right? Different ending to the same pattern. Each villager signs a contract, right? They are, of sound mind. They are all rational. They speak the same language, and they live in close proximity, right? They have a network. And they can foresee this problem, right? This risk of starvation, right? Risk of hitting the state that you don't come back from, right? That is irreversible, as starvation is, right? And they sign a contract, right? And each one of them agrees that they will take no more than one fish out per day. And if any person goes to take out more than one fish per day, then they are exiled from the village, which none of them want, because then they have to go do stuff on their own, and they can no longer trade, right? And trade, as we saw, makes people wealthier. So this is a really bad outcome, right? They are kicked out. They have to do it all on their own. And, if they get sick or injured, that's the end of it, right? So now, each one of them can rest easy, knowing that the collective good, right, the wealth-generating thing that is here in the environment, right, will not be depleted by the other people, right? And, there's no rational reason why the others should overfish, because they're going to get exiled, right? The sort of short-term interest in pulling extra fish out is outweighed by the fact that, they get booted from the village and don't have any access to the public good anymore, right? There's a contract to put this all into writing, make sure everybody agrees, everybody knows the terms, everybody is on board. Nobody has a reason to deviate from what is both good behavior for them, maximizes their own wealth, and the best behavior for the whole village, maximizes the wealth production capacity of all of them because they have worked out this sharing agreement, right? And if you're wondering whether this is, the foundation of some sort of government, then yeah, right? That's the whole point. And this idea, right, that people see a collective action problem and they are of sound mind and they can communicate with each other and draw up contracts and agree to do something that is going to produce the most wealth for everybody, is the foundation of international law, right? And it is the framework we should take, at least, for the purposes of doing this, as cynical as it might sound, right? That these folks are engaging in these international agreements, not necessarily out of the kindness of their own heart, but because, just like with villagers, because it protects them. It safeguards wealth production, and it results in more wealth and more stuff for everybody. It is a win for everybody in that case, and that's where we're going to leave it.